Welcome back to PoliSports Tea Time with BY's PoliSports Podcast, Cess Talks Sports, where we sip truth and serve it hot at the intersection of sports, politics, race, and culture. This cup's been brewing for decades. The real war isn't on the court, field, or ballot. It's in the media. Who gets to tell the story, control the system? We're on the battlefield of narratives. Black women's power, presence, and voices are challenged across politics, education, sports, and media. The old playbook is back, repackaged as white grievance politics. America always knew the force of the black press. Ida B. Wells, the Chicago Defender, Ebony, Jet, not just news, survival and truth when no one else would tell it. Over time, those outlets were chipped away, absorbed, or shut out of the mainstream. By the 1990s, the damage was almost fatal. 1996, the Telecommunications Act, signed by President Bill Clinton, quiet headline, massive impact. That act enabled giant media mergers, handing radio and TV to a few corporate owners, almost all white. And overnight, black radio stations, newspapers, and independent broadcasters lost licenses or were swallowed up. That wasn't accident. That was policy. Policy shapes perception. Fewer black media voices means fewer black stories told in our own image. The result, black athletes, especially black women, cast as strong but unprotected, visible but voiceless, celebrated only when convenient. The shift is here. A new generation of athletes says enough. No waiting on ESPN, CNN, or the Times. They're building mics, cameras, and platforms, reclaiming storytelling power through ownership. Enter Together. Media by women athletes, for women athletes, born out of resistance and built for representation. Simone Manuel, Olympic gold medalist, co-founder. Angel Reese, new generation fire starter, buying in as an investor. Together signaling that the next evolution of black media power. When black women hold the mic, the truth doesn't just get told, it gets amplified. When you control the story, you control the system. That's Together. Black women flipping the camera and seizing the mic.
Cess, you couldn't have set that up any better. Because what we're really witnessing is history looping back on itself. But this time with a remix. When Ida B. Wells published Southern Horrors in 1892, she wasn't just reporting, she was counter-programming, fighting state-sanctioned violence with facts and with a pen. What Simone Manuel and Angel Reese are doing through Together is that same spirit, digitalized and modernized. It's the 21st century version of the black press, athlete-owned, women-led, powered by tech, and rooted in advocacy. Now think about what that means in this climate, where white grievance politics is trying to rewrite everything from history books to sport narratives. The same political forces attacking DEI and critical race studies are also working overtime to reframe who the heroes and villains are in sports. That's why it matters. When black women athletes step into ownership and start curating their own image, it's not just branding, it's protection. When Simone and Angel walk into the media space, they're not just telling stories about games and highlights, they're building cultural armor. They're reminding the world that we are more than just our stats, our bodies, and our hairstyles. We are thinkers, innovators, and storytellers who can shape the global conversation. So as we start this journey tonight, I want the audience to keep one question in mind. What happens when very young women in the system tries to silence them, starts owning their microphone, the cameras, and the platform that shape public opinion? Because that family is where the revolution begins, not on the scoreboard, but in the story.
Let's pour this next cup for the woman who laid the foundation. The one who proved excellence doesn't just make history, it makes space. Simone Manuel, the name that shook the globe at Rio 2016. First black woman in Olympic history to win an individual swimming gold medal. She didn't just touch the wall, she shattered a barrier centuries deep, built on fear, exclusion, and myth. Black folks in water has always been political. Segregated pools, locked out opportunities, access denied. Simone glided through anyway, rewriting history stroke by stroke. The power wasn't just the medal, it was the mission after. Instead of staying in her lane, she asked, who's coming behind me and will they have access? She built the Simone Manuel Foundation, funded swim lessons, safety, training, and access for under-resourced kids. A platform turned into a pipeline. When she signed with TYR Sport, she flipped the contract with the inclusion writer, demanding diversity in every campaign. If she was in the picture, the people behind the camera had to look like her too. Not performance, policy. Simone proved being seen isn't enough. You have to own the lens, shape the image the world consumes, medals into movements, excellence into equity, visibility into voice. That's why she co-founded Together, She didn't wait for a seat at the table. She built it, pulled up a chair, and left the door open for the next generation. Simone Manuel showed representation isn't just about being seen. It's about owning the frame. That's the blueprint every Black woman athlete builds on today.
Says that's exactly it. Simone Manuel is the definition of movement in motion. She's the kind of trailblazer who doesn't need to shout to shift the atmosphere. Her presence in that pool was already protest. When Simone won that gold in Rio, it wasn't just about athletic dominance. It was about liberation, because swimming has never just been a sport for us. It's been a metaphor for survival. For generations, we were told that the water isn't our place, whether through segregation, stereotypes, or sheer lack of access. Simone didn't just break a record, she broke a generational curse. And what she did afterwards, that's what makes her different. She understood something powerful. The system can celebrate you and erase you if you don't build your own platform. That's why Together is such a critical extension of her work. It's her saying, you might control the coverage, but I control my story. Her inclusion rider was revolutionary too. That clause turned corporate partnership into cultural accountability. It forced brands to put action behind their diversity statements. In other words, Simone baked justice into her contract. That's the future of athlete activism, not just protest, but policy. And if you look at how her foundation connects to her co-founding of Together, it's clear she's playing chess, not checkers. She's building systems of sustainability, one through access to sport, one through access to media. Both are about creating visibility on our terms. Simone's quiet power reminds us that every moment needs both a voice and a vision. She's the vision. She laid the blueprint for how Black women could turn their platforms into permanence. And now, years later, a new generation has picked up that torch and they're running with it at full speed.
Let's start this next cup. If Simone Manuel is the blueprint, Angel Reese is the remix. Confidence plus culture, unapologetic, living proof of what happens when you flip the script. Angel Reese, the Bayou Barber, the most talked about, critiqued, and copied athlete in women's sports. September 2025, she becomes the newest investor in Together. That's not just business, that's history colliding with the moment. The same athlete the media labeled too emotional, too flashy, too confident. Instead of shrinking, she cashed in. Every critique became currency. Now she's using that power for ownership, amplifying women's voices the mainstream tries to silence. Her Reebok collab, gone in 5 hours. 3 colorways sold out before lunch. But the message hit harder. Rebounds, tied to her anti-cyberbullying campaign, proceeds funding education and awareness on online harassment, activism in sneakers. And then she went global. First pro athlete to walk the Victoria's Secret fashion show. 10 million views later, she didn't just break the internet, she became a VS Angel. The same body language they criticized now redefining beauty on the world stage. Reese didn't stop. She's reviving Juicy Couture with Angel Couture, a Black woman athlete reshaping Y2K nostalgia with her own edge. That's power. That's branding. That's legacy. And then came her boldest play, the AI-powered hate train campaign, using tech to fight back against online hate. Not just a statement, a strategy, controlling her narrative, protecting her mental health, and opening new lanes for advocacy. Now picture it, Simone Manuel, the strategist who built the table. Angel Reese, the disruptor who walked in with stilettos and a mic. Old school meets new wave. Reese never asked for permission. She brought the mic, the platform, the seat. And the same world that tried to villainize her, now they're forced to cover her success.
Cess, you said it perfectly. Angel Reese is a case study in cultural turnaround. The same media that once tried to paint her as a problem child of women's basketball now has to introduce her as owner, a mogul, and a media power player. That's poetic justice with a jump shot. What makes this moment so revolutionary is how Angel understands power. She's part of a generation that's not content with just breaking records. They want to break systems. By stepping into Together, she's joining a lineage of Black women who views visibility as both a shield and a sword. Now, politically speaking, this move couldn't have come at a better time. The WNBA is in the middle of the biggest labor showdown yet, the collective bargaining fight that could redefine women's sports for decades. Angel's ownership stake in a media company gives her and her peers leverage, because the truth is, whoever owns the storytelling platform owns the public narrative. That's where real bargaining power lies. So let's also talk about symbolism. Angel's joining the company co-founded by Simone Manuel ties two ends of the same struggle together. Simone represents access, breaking into spaces that were never welcoming to us. Angel represents amplification, making sure we can't be ignored once we're there. It's generational strategy. The calm storm meets the cultural hurricane. And her tech-savvy activism, that's what separates this new era from anything we've seen before. Using AI to expose online hate, building brand partnerships that fund social causes, that's not just marketing, that's mobilization. She's showing the world what it looks like when a Black woman athlete becomes a digital freedom fighter. But here's the larger point, family. Angel Reese is forcing America to wrestle with its contradictions, the contradictions it created. You can't love her talent and hate her confidence. You can't celebrate her success and still cling to the old stereotypes that tried to break her. She's making the world see that Black women in sports are not your underdogs. We're the architects of culture. So when Angel Reese walked into Together, it's not just another partnership announcement. It was a culture earthquake. It's a message to every Black girl watching that you don't have to play the game. You can own the highlight reels, the headlines, and the network too.
Let's pause on the brilliance behind what Simone helped build and Angel just bought into. Because Together isn't a brand, it's a revolution wrapped in a media company. Back in 2021, Alex Morgan, Sue Bird, Chloe Kim, and Simone Manuel said enough. Tired of being treated like the halftime show to men's sports, they came together with one goal: tell women's stories on their own terms, through their own lens, with their own power. If mainstream sports media wouldn't make space, they built their own house. That house became a neighborhood, Together, dropping docs, digital series, campaigns, collabs, celebrating women as full humans, athletes, advocates, mothers, dreamers. And here's the difference. They didn't just build a platform, they built a culture. Scroll their feed, no pity pieces, no first woman to ever labels, just power, joy, community, stories told by the people who lived them. So when Angel Reese walked in as a new owner, it wasn't chance, it was destiny. Simone brought structure and strategy. Angel brought fire and fan base. Together, a mission became a movement, and that's what mainstream media still misses. This ain't vanity, it's survival. Cultural insurance in a world that treats women's visibility like a trend instead of truth. Lil, break down the politics behind this play, because Together is changing the game on every level.
Cess, this is right here what I call power re-engineering. Together is proof that when Black women and women of color step into ownership, media stop being entertainment and start becoming infrastructure. Now let's start with the basics. Mainstream media has always been a gatekeeper. It decides who gets the spotlight, how long it lasts, and what camera angle to take. Historically, the gate has always been locked for women's sports, triple locked for Black women. Together came in like a crowbar, prying the things wide open. By design is intersectionality, a collective of voices from different races and sports saying visibility is currency and we're done being broke. Simone Manuel, as the co-founder, brought the intellectual architect. How do you make equity operational? How do you make media accountable? Angel Reese now brings scale, the viral Reese, the Gen Z swagger, the fashion, the fandom. That combination is nuclear. Now, politically, this is a bigger than storytelling. We're living in an economy of outrage, clicks, controversy, and character. When a Black woman athlete cries, celebrates, or claps back, the system profits from her pain. So when those same women create their own distribution networks, they disrupt the profit chain. That's economic resistance wrapped in media production. Every episode, campaign, and collab that Together produces chips away at the monopoly of a narrative that white-owned media still control. And that's why I call it a counter-narrative machine, because it doesn't just react, it reframes. It turns the insult into insight, the stereotype into story power. And Cess, I gotta say this. What Angel and Simone are doing together mirrors what Ida B. Wells and Mary Church Terrell did a century ago, using the press as protest. Only now it's digital, global, and monetized. They're turning the algorithm into activism. So let's also talk about the intergenerational piece. Simone represents mastery, years of navigating white elite spaces with grace and focus. Angel represents audacity, calling out bias in real time and daring the culture to adjust. Together, they balance each other out. One plays chess and the other one plays symbols. But both are making noise that can't be ignored. And you're right, Cess, this isn't just a company. It's a blueprint for self-determination. When you combine the quiet storm and the microphone, you get thunder that shakes systems.
Facts, Lil, because this ain't about coverage. It's about cultural control. Together proves it. When black women produce the narrative, the truth looks different, sounds different, hits different. Time to talk about the part the cameras don't show, the politics of visibility. Media decides who gets the spotlight, who gets the storyline, who gets the sympathy. And when it's time to pick the face of a sport, 9 times out of 10, it don't look like us. Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. One crown savior, the other cast villain. One gets saturation coverage, the other gets microaggressions disguised as commentary. Same game, different headlines. Simone Manuel, first black woman with Olympic swimming gold. Together, founder, advocate for equity, yet her story never got the same push Angel's did. Why? Because Simone's excellence wasn't clickbait. It didn't feed the outrage algorithm. Quiet discipline doesn't trend. Purpose doesn't go viral. The system rewards spectacle, not sustainability. That's why black women's stories get minimized, erased, or twisted, amplified only when struggle sells or confidence shocks. That's why Together exists, to flip silence into exposure, to prove there's more than one way to shine. For our ancestors, the weapon was the pen. For today's athlete, the weapon is the platform.
Sis, you hit the heart of that one. This ain't just about Simone and Angel. It's about the architects of erasure. The way visibility gets rationed like a resource, especially for black women, is no accident. It's structural. Historically, mainstream media has always depended on controlling who gets to be the symbol. During the civil rights era, they elevated the voices they could sanitize, while the radical truth tellers got buried. Today, it's the same pattern, just dressed up in hashtags and highlight reels. Simone's story didn't travel far because she wasn't framed as a personality to be consumed. She was framed as a professional to be respected. And respect doesn't trend. The media doesn't know what to do with a woman who's dignified, composed, and strategic. They prefer chaos over calm, controversy over consistency. That's why the algorithm reward one kind of black woman and ignore another. It's cultural engineering. Now here's where Together becomes revolutionary. It's not just a media company. It's a correction tool. It allows stories like Simone to exist in full color without the distortion of stereotype or sensationalism. It's media as liberation, the digital descendants of the Chicago Defender and Ebony magazine. Ida B. Well used her pen to expose the lies that justified lynching. Simone and Angel are using their platforms to expose the lies that distort black womanhood in sports. And if we're being honest, this selective storytelling we are seeing with Simone and Angel mirrors what happens in American politics. Black women can do the work, lead the movement, fund the vision, and still be treated like supporting characters in their own story. That's why ownership matters, because until we own media, we'll always be edited by someone else's agenda. What we're seeing now in Together is a return of that Ida B. Wells philosophy. Tell the truth and shame the system. The pen has evolved into pixels, but the mission is the same, to protect the truth, our image, and our legacy.
This ain't just headlines, it's history. The erasure of black excellence isn't an accident. It's strategy. And every time we build our own, we flip the playbook. Ownership is where the power gets real. Angel Reese investing in Together wasn't just media, it was money plus message. Generational wealth braided with generational activism. She's not cashing checks, she's cutting them. She knows influence without infrastructure is fragile. Trend today, gone tomorrow. Own the pipeline, the platform, the partnership, the production, and you build performance. Simone Manuel proved that with the TYR. That inclusion writer turned an endorsement into precedent. Not just you get me, but you get a standard, a system rewired from the inside out. That's why they're not just talent, they're infrastructure, building systems, not just stats, creating tables so the next generation doesn't have to beg for a seat because they already own it. And look at the WNBA. Players opting out of the CBA, demanding more pay, more freedom, more control. They've learned economics and storytelling can't be separated. No control of your image equals no control of your income. The revolution isn't only in boardrooms or ball courts. It's written in contracts. It's hidden in clauses. It's locked in content control.
Says I couldn't have said that no better, because this is the part folks often overlook. Activism in the 21st century isn't just about protest signs. It's about paperwork. The new front line is the fine print. When Angel Reese buys into Together, she's inserting herself into the ownership structure of how women's sports are told, sold, and scaled. That's political power disguised as entrepreneurship. And when Simone Manuel writes diversity into her brand deals, she's embedding justice into capitalism, forcing corporations to move beyond slogans and start practicing equity. These women are showing us that visibility without a financial stake is vulnerability. Because here's the truth. If you don't own your content, someone else owns your context. And that's how narratives and paychecks get weaponized. Now let's tie it into the WNBA CBA fight. These players are demanding more than salary increases. They're demanding agency. They're asking to profit from their likeness, from media rights, from the value they create. And Angel Reese's of the world are proving that you don't just have to play the game. You can own the business around it. This is the intersection of economics and liberation. We used to say representation matters, but now we're evolving that representation without remuneration is exploitation. Simone and Angel are rewriting the playbook so that Black women's brilliance is bankable and not borrowed. And we can't ignore the symbolism of this movement. Two Black women, one who came through the pool and one who came through the paint, converging in a shared mission of control. One used an inclusion clause to change the rules, and the other one used an investment check to change the room. That's a full circle economy of empowerment. Now, the bigger picture here is the ownership is activism. Every deal they sign, every clause they negotiate, every partnership they structure is a declaration of independence. They're telling the world, we are no longer your content. We are your creators, the CEOs, and the cultural capital. So when we say the revolution isn't happening in the boardroom or on the court, it's in the contract. And we mean it literally. Every signature is a strike for sovereignty.
Legacy means nothing without leverage. Simone Manuel and Angel Reese prove freedom fighters don't just march. Sometimes they negotiate. They're not rewriting headlines. They're reprogramming systems. Every clause, every campaign, every company says it loud. Black women aren't waiting for validation. We're building valuation. Power, media, control, visibility. It's all one battlefield. Black women's voices are being policed politically, culturally, digitally. Laws to silence votes, trolls to drain spirit, pundits twisted confidence into arrogance, a system working overtime to contain us. But every generation evolves. Our grandmothers fought with ballots, our mothers with classrooms, us with media. Together is digital liberation, not just a platform, protest. The 21st century Black press, woman-led, truth-centered, Ida B. Wells with a Wi-Fi. A camera lens turned into a cultural weapon. That's why Angel Reese and Simone Manuel matter now. One moves with fire, the other with focus. Both building what can't be censored or co-opted. Turning representation into revolution. Simone, the strategist, precise, policy-minded. Angel, the amplifier, fearless, visible, unapologetic. Together, they mirror our foremothers, the precision of Dorothy Height, the courage of Ida B. Wells. Athletes turned architects, sports as entry point into spaces shaping consciousness. The networks may still be owned by the system, but the narratives, they're being reclaimed. Liberation doesn't just march in the streets. It streams on your timeline. The message is clear. The system may control networks, but we control narratives. That's how Black women win in a world that profits from our pain.
Cess, that right there was the gospel of this era. Because what we're witnessing is not just representation, it's rebellion. Together is proof that media can be weaponized for justice when it's in the right hands. Let's call it what it is. We're in a digital civil rights movement. The algorithms have replaced the editor, and the feeds have replaced the front pages. The same forces that once used to control public opinion now uses pixels to do it. And in that landscape, Black women control of media isn't a luxury, it's survival. Simone Manuel and Angel Reese are operating with that awareness. They're not just creating content, they're creating counterpower. Simone's foundation, inclusion rider, built access from the ground up. Angel, cultural dominance and media investments push visibility from the top down. That's a two-front war, access and amplification. And what's beautiful is that they're not waiting for permission to lead. They're doing what Ida B. Wells did with her newspaper. what Ella Baker did with her organization. They're shifting from participation to authorship, because to participate in media is to be seen. To author media is to be remembered. This is where we have to understand the political impact. In a culture obsessed with outrage, Black women's self-determination becomes radical. Every time Angel Reese posts, every time Simone Manuel speaks, every time Together drops a new piece of content, it chips away at centuries of misrepresentation. That's not entertainment, that's emancipation. So when we say this is a revolution, we mean it literally. This is a modern day version of Freedom Papers, digital, visual, global. It's media as memory, culture as resistance, and visibility as protection. Black women are no longer asking to be included in the story. We are writing it, filming it, funding it, and streaming it ourselves. That's a revolution.
Let's pour one last cup, because this wasn't just about media, it was about movement. We named the battlefield, a war of narratives where power lives and who tells the story. Simone Manuel, the quiet revolutionary, turned Olympic gold into opportunity and corporate partnership into policy. She showed that representation means nothing if you don't own the frame. Then came Angel Reese, the disruptor, flipping the same mic the media used to critique her into a megaphone for empowerment. Her investment in Together proved this generation isn't waiting to be invited. They're buying the platform. Together, they turned Together into more than a company, a weapon of visibility. Proof that advocacy lives where influence meets infrastructure, where sports meets storytelling, where truth meets technology. We broke down selective visibility, how one story gets lifted while another gets silenced. Simone and Angel counter with ownership, policy, and purpose. Not athletes, architects, building futures where Black women never need permission to exist in full view. And this is bigger than content. Together is cultural continuity. Women of color using digital platforms to reimagine equity on their own terms. DEI isn't dead, it's being reborn in the hands of those it was meant to protect. This is just the beginning. Together shows what happens when representation becomes revolution. And we'll be watching as they shape the future of athlete-owned, women-led media.
That's it right there, Cess. Because what we've seen tonight is the blueprint for freedom through storytelling. Simone and Angel didn't just join the media industry, they're rewriting it. They're shifting the lens from exploitation to empowerment, from control, coverage to control. And as we close, I want to really sit with these truths, not as questions, but as challenges to carry forward. Now, the stories about Black women in sports that deserve a Together documentary already exist. They're the ones we've ignored far too long. It's time to amplify them. Athlete-owned media isn't just an alternative, it's an antidote. Every view, every click, every share is a vote for who gets to define our culture. And keeping icons like Simone Manuel as visible as viral stars like Angel means we, the audience, must value legacy as much as we value them likes. Visibility is a community project, and we must all play our role. So when you log off tonight, remember this: media power is people power. Every follow, every repost, every dollar you spend on platform that honors truth, that's a political act.
This ain't just about who gets the headline. It's about who holds the pen. Simone Manuel built the platform, Angel Reese amplified it, and together they made Together the loudest mic in women's sports. These are the stories that matter, because sports aren't only about games played, they're about stories told and systems dismantled. Tap in, like, share, drop your comments, hype the video. Pull up at RespectHerGame.Online and carry the convo with hashtag RespectHerGame when you're advocating for Black women in sports. We're tracking Together into the next frontier, where DEI media flips into digital liberation and the mic stays in our hands. This is PoliSports Tea Time with Political Lil and Cess. Favorite Auntie with Uncle Tendencies. Sip the knowledge, spill the truth. Stay tuned. Talk soon. We out.